कल भी काफ़ी इसी बात पर बहस हुई थी और आज यही टॉपिक आपका ही रहा कि जब हम दावत देंगे अहले बिदात को, जो असली अहले बिदात हैं, कबूरी हैं, देवबंदी तो उनको जब हम दावत देंगे उसमें, और जो अहले हदीस या सलफी कहलाते हैं मगर हिज़्बी हैं और तकफीर और इस किस्म की चीज़ों के अंदर भाई जाते हैं जमात, उन दोनों को दावत देने में कुछ हम फर्क करेंगे.
As our brother Ustad Tariq Brohi Hafidhullah Ta'ala asked a question about some of the nuances of giving da'wah to people from the various sects whose bid'ah, they are Ahlul Bid'ah, meaning in the Asl they are Ahlul Bid'ah, whether they be Qaburiyin, Barelwiya, Deobandiyya, or some of these sects that have with them innovations. And does the da'wah to them differ from the da'wah to those who call themselves, Al-Hadith? And yet, alongside them using this label that they have with them, Hizbiyya, and opposition to the Muslim rulers, and rebelling against the Muslim rulers, and maybe even something of takfir with them, of the Muslim rulers, that they don't regard these countries to be lands of Islam and so on, then is there a difference in the manner that we give da'wah? The only difference really in reality is knowing the haqa'iq or the reality of each of these groups. Yes, some are worse than others. Those who commit shirk with Allah are worse than those who do not commit shirk with Allah. So in terms of their fisq, in terms of their sin, one is worse than the other. As for giving them da'wah, then all of them are deserving of da'wah. From the amatul nas amongst them, they're all deserving of da'wah. As for their leaders, stay away from them. Their leaders, they just need to be refuted and their errors exposed so that the people know the reality that these people are leading you astray. They are the ones sitting at the top, causing the people to be misguided. So, if you are giving da'wah to a person who calls upon the dead one in his grave, then you need to know the hadith and the ayat and that which Allah and His Messenger ﷺ have mentioned with regard to calling upon the dead, calling upon the ones who cannot answer you. Like the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, may the curse of Allah be upon the Jews and Christians, for when a righteous man or a prophet used to die from amongst them, they used to take his grave as a place of worship. They used to take his grave as a masjid. Or masjid here meaning either they used to make sajda there, or that they used to build a masjid, a physical masjid over it. And other than that, from the ahadith. As for the Hizbiyun, from those who call themselves Ahlul Hadith, then the name itself should not really cause us to be deceived. Because even the Barelwi calls himself Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Right? So we are not deceived by the Barelwi or the Deobandi or the Tablighi who calls himself Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, because they give themselves these labels. Just like, some of these ahzab, they give themselves the label Ahlul Hadith, Ahlul Athar, even Salafi. They call their madaris, Madrasa Salafiyya. But they have errors in their usul, in their methodology of understanding the kitab and the sunnah. They oppose the aqidah and the manhaj of the salaf. And they do not call to that which the Anbiya, the prophets and the messengers called to, because the call of the prophets and messengers was Tawheed. That was the first thing that they called the people to. And the number of Jum'ahs that we attend, and you hear the Khatib every single week, and all you're hearing is Fadalul A'mal. If the call of the prophets and the messengers began with Tawheed, where's the Tawheed? That should be the primary message, especially in a country like this. Primary message should be Tawheed, taking the chapters of Kitab al-Tawheed of Shaykh al-Islam and working through them every other week or even every week, and using that as the basis of calling the people to Tawheed, so that those people in the congregation can go and call their neighbours, call their friends, call their work colleagues, call their families to this Tawheed. But if the people are sitting there, they don't even know the aqsam of Tawheed. Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah, Tawheed al-Asma wa Sifat, they don't know. Never mind the details and the tafsil of each of these categories of Tawheed. They don't know the difference between Shirk al-Akbar and Shirk al-Asghar. Kufr Akbar, Kufr, Asghar. Nifaq al-Akbar, Nifaq al-Asghar. They don't know. Because every week, it is just Fadalul A'mal. Every week. And this wasn't the starting point of the call of the prophets and the messengers. Starting point is Tawheed, establishing the Aqidah. And you don't hear that. You don't hear the ulu of Allah. Week in, week out, week in, week out. It is just Fadail al-A'mal. And it is not to say that the people sitting there will not benefit from the Fadail. They do. They benefit from the, from the issues of the righteous. Because Fadail al-A'mal meaning the righteous deeds. But that in a country like this, or even any country for that matter, the manhaj of the Anbiya remains the same. Every generation, every land, every time. That's why when you go to the Mamlaka, you could be in Medina and the Khatib is talking about Tawheed. You could be in Riyadh, he's talking about Tawheed. You could be in Samita, he's talking about Tawheed. You're in Jeddah, he's talking about Tawheed. And when that Tawheed and the oneness of Allah and the worship of Allah alone and the abandonment of shirk, wala and bara, based upon the ibadah of Allah and knowing the names and attributes of Allah, you see that those nations that are raised upon this have the people who are the most fearful of Allah and the most distant from sin. It doesn't mean sin doesn't exist in those lands. It does. But they are more distant from sin and more distant from sinful actions. Why? Because Tawheed is the basis of their actions. If Iman that is built upon Tawheed, belief in the heart, because that is the starting point, and it is the foundation. I'tiqad fil qalb, and then qawlul lisan, and then the a'malul jawarih. All of this constitutes Iman, because Iman is belief in the heart, speech upon the tongue, actions of the limbs. But its foundation, if it is not built upon Tawheed, like Mu'adh bin Jabal, when the Prophet ﷺ sent him to Yemen, he said to him that the first thing that you call the people to is to worship Allah alone. وَإِذَا عَرَفُوا ذَلِكَ, if they accept that from you, then tell them that Allah has told them to pray 5 times a day. Obligated 5 times a day. Meaning, as Shaykh Ahmed al-Najmi and the scholars have said, that if they do not accept that Allah alone is to be worshipped, then the prayer is of no benefit. If they don't accept that, then what's the prayer going to do for them? So we're sitting, huge events are taking place around us. And situations happen around us. And these, khatibs in these masajid, who claim that they are people of hadith and people of sunnah, just fadail ul-a'mal. When are you going to speak with the speech of the Anbiya? When are you going to come and speak like the Prophet ﷺ spoke to Ahlul Makkah, when he called them to the worship of Allah? And when he called them to the worship of Allah, he also invited them to righteous deeds as well. It doesn't mean that the Prophet ﷺ ignored the orphan. He fed the orphan, he looked after the poor, he had the best of manners, but that was all established upon Tawheed. So where is that? So when we are giving da'wah to them, then each of them in his bid'ah or in his opposition, we give him da'wah. We don't say, well, they call themselves Ahlul Hadith, let them carry on with it, and we don't. No, we invite them, because they're mistaken. Every week you see from them errors and mistakes. That's why Al-Albani used to speak about them, that they have with them this bid'ah idafiyya in umur. Innovations that they try to use general text from the kitab to support their innovations. You see them, when they speak about demonstration in the street, they say, well, we don't agree with violent demonstrations, but we agree with peaceful demonstrations. Where do you get that from? Where did you invent this bid'ah? Where does it say in the kitab or the sunnah or the way of the salaf that violent demonstrations are disallowed, but peaceful demonstrations are allowed? Both of them are disallowed. Don't say to me, Shaykh Fulan said, and my Shaykh said, and my Mawlana said. That doesn't mean anything to us. Kitab, Sunnah, Sahaba, give us something from the early Salaf. Give us something from Ahmed, Ali al-Madini. They went through suffering, they went through hardship, they were tortured, they were imprisoned. Many of them. Many of those scholars, they suffered. Barbahari, rahimahullah ta'ala. So now you come and you say that we are people of hadith. If you are people of hadith, then follow the hadith. What are you opposing the hadith for? Whomsoever does a deed, man amila amalan laysa alayhi amruna fahuwa rad. Whomsoever does a deed that is not from our religion, then he shall be rejected. So this marching of yours is rejected. All of these other innovations that you do are rejected. All of these gharaib, all of these strange types of, you look for an exception, like one, you find one issue that actually opposes the jamhoor of Ahlul Ilm, and it is ghareeb to the whole ummah, and you put it up and say, we are Athari, that's why we're doing it. So you're Athari there, why aren't you Athari when it comes to demonstrations and politics and takfir and the rulers? Why aren't you Athari when it comes to refuting Ahlul Bid'ah? What happened to Athari then? Then you start raising them and they say, oh, this person from such and such a sect, he was such a great man, he was such a great alim. It is such a great loss that he has passed away or whatever. Where is your tamyiz? That's the question. This is why when you give them da'wah, whether it be the Tablighi or the Brailwi or the Deobandi or this one or that one or the one who calls himself Ahlul Hadith, then you give them da'wah. Because they have mistakes, all of them have mistakes. Some of them are worse than others, la shak. Some of them are worse than others. We don't say all of them, that all of their sins, they are the same at one level. No, some are worse than others, la shak. The one who commits shirk is worse than the one who doesn't commit shirk. So we need to know how to speak to these people. But I found, and Allah knows best, and I'm sure many of you share my experience, that the general folk from amongst them, they will listen to you. But they need that constant, conversation, that constant reminder, up until they realize, that when they say the penny drops. When the penny drops to them, they have that moment, that eureka moment, and everything comes together in their minds. That's when they realize it is the methodology of the Sahaba. That is the decider. It is what the Sahaba were upon. Kitab, Sunnah, yes, but not interpreted by your aql, or by your sect, or by your group, but with the understanding of the Sahaba. Now, of course, the next question is getting them to the knowledge of the Sahaba. That's where we come in. Because we have access to that. We have access to the manhaj and the aqidah and the, and the way and the path of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum. Barakallahu feekum. We'll conclude for today, inshallah. Jazakumullahu khairan, walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen, wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.